Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Plan for You MD. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Chaffee, and today I have a very special return guest, my good friend Chris Brandlin, who is coming back to talk to us about what he's doing and his upcoming run for Congress. Chris, great to see you, man. How you doing?
Great to see you again. And thank you for having me back too.
Of course, yeah. For people that didn't see our first episode and don't know who you are, can you just give us a bit of background and introduction about yourself and what you do?
Sure, I'll run through it a lot quicker than last time. Before I even became an attorney, I came from the health and fitness industry as a personal trainer during college and law school, and used to be a wrestler in high school, so I was a very competitive wrestler. So I just try to stay in the fitness industry even kind of going into college. And I was a personal trainer during college at Cal State Long Beach. It actually did very well. And I did that as I was a fraternity president, but fraternity president wasn't something you should brag about because you have a bad background. I definitely drank and partied a little bit more than most people. But anyways, right when the market crashed in 2007, I'm not sure if you remember that, Anthony. I'm not sure if you were in the US around that time. But in
Yeah.
2007, 2008, it was a huge market crash. So
Hmm.
I was getting my bachelor's degree at Cal State Long Beach. All my friends were telling like, hey, we all got our degrees and we haven't found any work. No one's hiring. I was like, shit, you know what? I'm not sure if I want to be a fitness trainer for the rest of my life. I got this bachelor's in communications, which is kind of a bullshit degree. So I was like, you know what? Let me see what I can do, and I need to look into a master's. But I'm like the youngest of three kids, and so my father's an attorney. My other uncle's a attorney, and my other uncle's a judge, and my granduncle's attorney, and my other granduncle's an attorney, and his kids are attorneys. So I'm like the last of the Brownlands. So I kind of asked my father, I was like, hey, what do you think about me going to law school? And he kind of laughed at me because he called me like the skinny version of John Belushi. He's like, you party your ass off. I can't take you serious anymore. I was like, oh no, I want to prove him wrong. So I not only was I still training at the time, but I basically like almost completely stopped drinking. I was slowing down the drinking drastically, and then I just stopped drinking, period. And I work with a registered dietitian because I wanted to run my own training business to in between law classes. So I took all my clients from 24 Hour Fitness with me privately, and I was actually able to pay for my own law school. It was good because my business did so well, and I went
Nice.
into all natural bodybuilding. I was always a 195 pound, like kind of stocky power lifter. So I'm not sure if
Mm.
you could record. I'm like about a little under 150 right now, and I kind of floated this
Oh,
like
wow.
my life. But I used to be close to 200 pounds as a powerlifter during
Okay,
college.
wow.
I think it was like 190 probably on average, 180, 190, but sometimes I got up to 200. But I didn't take any substances. All I did, I was eating 6 to 7,000 calories a day and just lifting heavy. But I was also partying and drinking a lot. I didn't eat a lot of sugary foods, but it was basically just doing like just it's that ego, like that meathead mentality. I don't want to say meathead because we're trying to use it in like a good sense, but anyways, it was just like a shitload of chicken and rice, and a bulk amount of that. But I would be drinking on the weekends like 24/7. So I wanted to cut it down really straight. So I worked with a registered dietitian who actually is a huge fan of the carnivore diet, by the way. He's worked with a lot of all natural bodybuilders, and his name is Chuck Rudolph. He's actually in Tennessee. He may be close to when I go meat stock next month or in May. But anyways, he basically put me on a very strict ketogenic diet, and I did carb cycling, where basically you're doing like it's just like meat and vegetables and some quality good fats for 3 to 4 days straight, and then you would refeed on carbohydrates. Mainly, you try to do it with the safe carbs, like the sweet potatoes was the easiest thing that they use in the bodybuilding world, the all natural bodybuilding world. Well, the unnatural ones they can eat a lot, definitely a lot more. But anyways,
Yeah.
so I wanted to be very strict with us. So I got down to like I was a little under 200, and when I started, and I got all the way down to about 155, but I kept all my muscle because he put me on a strict training regimen too, because he worked, he's a very fit guy too. So I ended up getting to like 3% body fat, and I kept it, and I was just refeeding, and I didn't drink and I didn't party. I lived on the Tupperware diet, where you make all of your food the night before, and you basically eating every 3 to 4 hours. I mean, during law school, it kind of worked out for me. But anyways, I my last contest was Mr. Los Angeles Natural. It was actually on my birthday in 2010. So I won my last contest on my birthday, but I was like, all right, I gotta take the bar exam. I gotta focus on studying. So enough of this competing shit. I need to like have like a sane life for a while. So anyways, I passed the bar exam and I was practicing law. And for the after the first couple of years of practicing law, even though I wasn't eating a lot of crap, but I did celebrate a little bit on like the alcohol and different functions, all that. But all of a sudden, I got really sick in 2016, and I made the huge mistake by going to a lot of conventional doctors because I never went to the doctors before that. I really never had a reason, unless it was just because I'd do backflips off of like a house, like when I was drunk. I would
You're that
basically
guy.
get it. Yeah, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I just broke my leg. I didn't land this, and I was like, basically get put on the stretcher and like wheeled over to St. Joseph's Hospital, or was it St. Mary's Hospital in Long Beach? I was down for the street from the fraternity house. I became a
Mm.
frequent patient. But anyways, so I was a little pissed. I had to go back to the doctor for like, for not feeling good because it wasn't just my gut. It was like everything. It was joint pain like throughout my body. And I remember like it was just complete like muscle pain too. And I just felt so tired. I always used to get up at 4 in the morning and like work out. And I was kind of that kind of like adrenaline junkie during college and even law school, but I couldn't get up. I was just so like glued to bed. So uh when the main problem was the gut, I did make the worst mistake. They put me on a crap load of pharmaceuticals, and I just mainly it was just a lot of like laxatives and antibiotics and corticosteroids. And they thought they can kind of reduce like the inflammatory process, and that combination completely destroyed my gut. And it got so bad to a point where a piece of my intestine, my sigmoid colon, towards the end of your colon, was starting to get really inflamed. And the doctor, he said, hey, you know what? I think this has been the problem the whole time. His surgeon over at UCI. And he's like, I think if we just remove this piece of your intestine, this part of your sigmoid, about 6 inches towards the end of your intestine, you're going to be much better. Because I hit it. I was having like the party life before that, even before I start like got into law school, but I still had a good social and dating life. And I was like, fuck, I've been sick for like the last year. I've been like stuck to a bed. This really sucks. And so that's why I became like so desperate at the point, like, doctors, get me better. I feel like shit, what the hell is wrong with me? So
Mm.
he ended up removing a piece of my intestine, but I told you in the last kind of podcast that it was one of the worst like experiences ever. It
Mm.
was like one of the worst surgeries because not only I'm not sure if they had a problem with the anesthesia, but I actually woke up when they were sewing up my intestines. I woke up too early and I screamed in so much pain. And someone with
Good God.
a good amount of tattoos on his back and breaking almost every bone in my body throughout my life from stupid stunts, I've never felt this amount of pain. I just
Mm.
remember I screamed probably with the entire like 12th floor hospital at UCI. I probably heard everything. So I screamed so loud that they had to give me a bunch of morphine and put me back to sleep. I think it was Tramadol as well. They did a combination of everything, just a really strong sedative to put me to sleep, and I was to drug me up. And then I woke up later, and I asked them like, okay, so what's the next? They're like, oh, we're gonna release you like by Thursday. It was on a Tuesday. I'm like, on 2 days, all right. As long as I'm gonna be better, that's fine. But I was just still felt so uncomfortable. I was like, yeah, I can't
Mm.
really move. And it's just they had me really drugged up. And when they released me, I just started having a bunch of problem. I didn't even move my bowels before they released. I'm like, I want to make sure this thing like
Mm.
healed up, like is all fixed. And I started having complications for the next couple of weeks, just really bad pain. I wasn't wanting to eat that much, and then I ended up developing a basically humongous infection. It was the size of a grapefruit.
Mm.
I have the photos
Jeez.
still. I don't want to gross out your audience, but anyways, it became like it was almost like the movie The Alien, where it was going to pop out of your stomach. And I was thinking, I was like, holy shit. It was like I have something growing inside me, like an alien or a critter or something. But it was popping out. It was bright red. So when I took like
Mm.
a photo, the surgeon said, "Hey, go back to the hospital. We need to go back to the ER. We need to treat that immediately." And they basically got the scalpel and they didn't put me to sleep. I was completely awake the entire fucking time. And they said, "Oh, we'll put a little bit of lidocaine," but and I just remember right when they started cutting open, since it was so infected and inflamed, it was so sensitive. So right when they started cutting me open, because the main kind of incision was 2 inches below the belly button, it was mainly a laparoscopic surgery. So
Mm.
right when they were cutting it open, I was already feeling pain. I just remember they didn't give me any painkillers, but I was just in such a mood. So I was basically almost biting my tongue to the point I was bleeding from my mouth. It was that bad. I was just trying not to scream. And when I tried to ask him, I was like, hey, I have some questions that we can hopefully answer. He's like, no, you can ask me right now. he was like one of the other surgeons of the hospital, like, so you're only going to allow me to speak with you while you're cutting open my intestines? He's like, yeah, that's my schedule today. And I was like, I can't believe this fucking kind of treatment. It was the worst decision I did. So, anyways, and instead of sewing back up, he said, no, the infection came from the inside. So what we're going to do
Mm,
is you're going to put gauze in it. You're going to change it 3 times a day. This is part of the wound healing when you got major infections. You don't want to sew it back
hmm.
up because you're and then you're just building a moisturized environment. It's just going to regrow in like a lot of bacteria, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, no, we're just going to change. You're going to have to change the gauze. He squeezed out all the basically the infection plus, and it was so painful. I just remember I had the big 2 inch incision, well, about almost 2 or 3 inches, and I was like, oh my God, this looks like a vagina now. It just like this, what the fuck? This is like I could put a hole in, I could put my finger in it. This is pretty gross up. He's like, no, just don't touch it. Just keep it clean. Just change the gauze 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, evening. And I did that for a couple of weeks, but it started getting, even though it wasn't sealing up all the way, it started getting really big again. I was like, holy shit, this is getting infected again. Go
Mm,
back, cut you back open, squeeze out
mm,
infection. No anesthesia. I'm like, holy shit, I'm building a good pain tolerance. That's the only good thing about this. So, anyways, and I just remember after that, I was like, look at, I was kind of losing weight, but I was like, look at, so inflamed. I basically was so sensitive. I was like, I'm not gonna have a drip of lemon juice. I'm gonna basically drink just purified water. I'm gonna do an elimination diet where it's gonna like slow cook like chicken breast and meats. I never wanted to throw those out, but then I realized when I started reducing the plants, my inflammation was going down. I was like, all right,
mm,
I can't. I already knew because I was a dietetic technician before that because I did some additional classes through my credential like right before this happened. I was like, look, I got no insoluble fiber. I definitely, maybe I could try some soluble fiber, but then it started giving me a lot of bloating and all that. So I was like, all right, I'm trying to like measure this out. And what I ended up doing is I did a 10-day water fast first. Okay. But I've done fast before when I was having the gut problems, but I did one a little bit longer. So 10 days, I got a little skinnier than I thought wanted. But when I refed, this is the first time when I refed on only meat because I was kind of already looking until I was like, hey, I'm having less problems with meat. Maybe I just need a little bit vegetables from natural motility or something like that. And I remember it was a huge difference. So I started looking into it. I was like, look at, oh my God, maybe if I only eat meat the rest of my life, this may be something that can save
mm,
my life. So I ended up looking into it. The first person I spoke with was Michaela Peterson. This is before she became popular in like mid 2018.
mm,
And I just remember that she just made it clear, like, no, even your cooking oils, only animal. This is helping me out with my autoimmune conditions. This is probably your only option now. Only get tallow, and I never even bought tallow before that. I didn't even like heard of tallow. It's like beef
mm,
fat. Where the hell did I find this shit? And I was like, I didn't see it at all the grocery stores. So I started like buying that online, and then Sprouts and Whole Foods started, offering that too. So I was just eating that, and I noticed I was like, all right, I want to get a little bit more in tune to see like how many organs to eat, what type of meats, what's the best. Then I followed up with Sean Baker.
mm,
So this he was already pretty popular, but this is before he became a lot more popular. And it was actually just a normal Skype, and he said, yeah, you got to see what's going to be your suiting your body the best. Like see how you respond to certain meats and all that, because I couldn't do any dairy and I couldn't do any eggs.
mhm,
And then I told him I was thinking about, working with the Paleo Medicina Clinic because, with Dr. Sophia Clemens and just going over there and like just taking a couple of weeks off of work because I was still working this entire time. I didn't take any
mm.
breaks.
Jeez.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I ended up taking a couple of weeks off of work and I flew over to Budapest, Hungary on Thanksgiving in 2018. So it was like November. And that's where I met Dr. Sophia Clemens. She was with Dr. Toff at the time. And I just remember that it was
Hey everyone, really happy to announce a new sponsor for the show and for everybody down in Australia, Stockman Steaks, who are delivering high quality grass-fed and finished pasture-raised beef and other meats, flash frozen and vacuum sealed to your door, something that I've been enjoying a lot of myself recently as well. They also have a great range of specialty items such as high-fat keto mince and carnivore beef and organs mince with liver, kidneys, and beef heart as well. So use code Chaffee today for a free order of beef mince or another specialty gift along with your order at stockmansteaks.com.au, and I'll see you over there. Thanks, guys.
I just remember that I asked her about supplements the first time I met her. She's like, no, you're not allowed to take anything. You're gonna eat
Mhm.
just quality meats, salt and water. That's it. That's all you're gonna eating. And I was amazed because I stayed there a little bit over a week. on like even though I was if I ate too much fat because I think I ate too much of the pork fat slabs because their pork is
Mm.
so good because they don't feed their pork any corn or soy.
Garbage. Yeah.
So oh yeah, I was like I never usually liked pork before that. I was like, oh, I like a little like eggs and bacon sometimes, but I never really liked any kind of like loins or pork or like so when I started eating that pork, it became like my favorite meat after that. But anyways,
Mm.
I realized I don't even need to take any kind of like prokinetics or something like that for my gut. If you get too stuck up, just eat a bunch of fat. This is like the easiest thing. This is in everything. I just remember my inflammation went down immediately after that. So when I came back to
Mm.
the U.S., I wanted to promote it a little bit more, and I started being more and more outspoken. I was thinking of getting my master's in dietetics, but then when I told the head dietetics director at USC, he's like, oh, or no, it was a she, but she's like, you got a very extensive background. You're an attorney, been practicing law, and you got a dietetics degree, and why do you want to be part of this dietetics program? I was like, well, I kind of want to, I want to get a little bit more intrigued with this. I want to get more involved, but I also want to make some changes that I think would be really benefiting, like, community as a whole. I think you need to flip your food pyramid upside down. I remember
Hmm.
it was her and like three others at like a committee meeting when I was doing my first interview, and they right when I said that, I'm like, no, I was like, they're like, "Well, that's probably not proper to say, Mr. Brown." I'm like, well, don't you realize that like for the past 30 40 years we're getting unhealthy, we're not getting healthier, we're getting fatter, we're getting slower, we're getting more
Hmm.
pathetic. I was like, I think it's a lot of your like excessive carbohydrates and sugars, and now you're demonizing meat, and I just found out that I'm healing from meat, and I want to spread the word. And they basically said we don't feel
Mm.
you feel like you're a suitable candidate. So I got my MBA.
Hmm.
Then when the lockdown started, that's where I really didn't like the forced vaccinate vaccines that they're doing throughout the United States in the mask mandates. And I was the only attorney speaking out. And I decided when I was finished, right when I finished my MBA, right when the lockdown started, I decided I wanted to get my PhD and potentially run for politics after that. So
Mm.
that's been that was my goal, like in 2021. And I started like the PhD program in 2022, and I'm right next to the finish line because I just got my oral defense approved. But
Yes.
yeah, I think a lot of people in politics, is my observation, my research, as I just told you, more than half of the presidents of the United States were attorneys. They had a law
Mm.
degree. So I already met that requirement. And the other kind of half, they have some kind of bachelor's degree in public policy administration. And I liked for the fact that my public policy credential, the residencies that we had were crossovers with public health. And this is a huge statement because not only am I a huge proponent of the carnivore diet and I wanted to promote the good word, but I really think that they're overprescribing a bunch of pharmaceuticals. And especially when they did the vaccine mandate, some people at least thought outside the box, like, this doesn't seem right, especially going to force it. So that's actually part of my dissertation topic that I just to pass my oral defense is also some of the damages from the vaccine mandates, hospital shortages, mental health effects on terminating employees because I think the African American healthcare workers were the highest rates that showed the most
Mm.
hesitancy toward the vaccine. People don't realize that it was actually the black nurses that were saying, I was like, hey, my God, maybe I should be a black nurse because I'm like the one speaking out against the vaccine. So they were hesitant for a lot of different reasons, but you wanted to study that. And the other part of the dissertation topic, the other research question is what should hospital administrators consider for any kind of future global, I don't like to use the word pandemic, but crisis, they want to call it.
Hmm.
Because you can't just be terminating all your employees, because what happens? You have hospital shortages throughout the nation, and people that go in for chemotherapy or the regular, they're not treating for COVID. No, they want to treat like a cancer or like some radiation therapy or orthopedic surgeries because they've had basically a tear in their labrum and their hip for like months. They're walking on something that's not even there. They can't get any of those procedures because they don't have enough staff at the hospitals. So you can see that the vaccine mandates were hugely. But so my major goal is to promote a change or a curriculum, possibly even with the medical institutions too, because I know you talked about that with Dr. Don, and I talk with Dr. Don about that too. Is That's going to be one of the change, but also I think need to put a huge amount of the restrictions or at least limitations on pharmaceuticals. I can't
Hmm.
believe as an attorney I see so many. Most of my clients are like in their 60s, 70s, some in their 50s. Most of them are a little older than me, okay? Because I turned 40 in June. But I see sometimes when we're here for a mediation or a deposition and we have to go in the conference room, they got like a pill case. And I'm like, dude, why are you taking so many pills? I don't take any pills. I take a little bit of BPC 157. I just take that because I like keeping my inflammation down because I probably torture my body by not getting enough sleep and driving across state lines half the time. But anyways, I see it, and they don't even know half their medications. I'm like, this is a huge issue. I was like, you don't even, and not just that, these people are usually, you could just tell they're stressed, they're overweight, and they eat like crap. And I'm like, you know what? You're not really getting better. And every time you come in here, you're complaining about not feeling good. I think I have some, I think I have some good, like, I have a good hypothesis of why you're not feeling good. You don't even know half the
Mhm.
pills you're taking. You don't know what this is going
Mhm.
to do to you. Have you looked at the side effects? Why are you taking this? Well, my doctor was telling me I'll take this for my blood pressure, but I may have some kind of side effects with, with edema as well, or I may have some complications. So I'm going to take some diuretics on top of that. And this is for I think this is
Mhm.
for my liver, but they said, don't take too much, but I'm not sure if this is and they don't even know what they're taking. They're just taking it. So I can't believe, like, you look at, we're in a capitalist society where businesses have to thrive. They have to make money, but you shouldn't make money at the torture of your own
People's
patients.
expense. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, when it's producing so much more harm, you should have like a cost benefit analysis of what you're doing, at least some kind of moral conscience of like, hey, I'm actually making people a lot sicker and I'm killing them, but I'm making money.
Yeah.
And I really hope a lot of people can actually recognize that these pharmaceutical industries, they control everything. Like I told you, my Fox News segment had to get shortened just because I made a comment on big pharma. I was like, but Fox News, even though it's supposed to be more, I'm a very strong devoted Republican, but when Fox News is supposed to be a little bit more right wing, you know, even the big pharma's buying now. That's why people are like going like news
They've got
and
sponsors,
yeah, I
and
know.
that's
Most of their
yeah.
funding is coming
Yeah.
from big pharma. Like they
Mm.
control all that, and that's why they have so much advertising. I
Yeah.
met with Bobby Kennedy once at the inauguration, so I went to the Baja Bar, and that was my big kind of introduction to really move forward on
Mhm.
the 2026 midterms because I had like some people that sit down with me and they looked over my background. They're like, you're an interesting character. Like, you talked about running for Congress in 2028, 2030. Why don't you just do it for the midterms? We just got, Trump just got in office and Bobby Kennedy is going to get sworn in. We can give you some people that are part of Team Kennedy as your
Mhm.
campaign manager. That's why I'm so fortunate. I'm like, dude, I'm a huge proponent of,
Nice.
I mean, he's not a carnivore, but he's thinking of like some of the major issues that really just need to be addressed first, And
Mhm.
anyways, yeah, one of his things that he's doing right now is he's limiting the amount of advertising on pharmaceuticals, which I think is a huge point because they can buy out most of all these these outlets, all these TV outlets. I mean, they have the more money because advertising costs a
Mhm.
crap load of money, and they
Mhm.
have so much. The rich, one of the wealthiest industries known to man is the pharmaceutical industry. They have all the money. They can buy so much airtime, and you can see that other commercials can be so manipulative because they'll see like some person like really suffering and all of a sudden he's playing around with his family like, oh well, he's if you want to have a new kind of a way of life, try this product and these side effects and they say like 20 different side effects like really kick within like 5 seconds towards the end of the commercial, and then they have the person doing a big smile right before they finish the commercial. I'm not sure if you could have noticed that, right? Too, it's a
Mhm.
very trend. But when you really follow the side effects, oh my God, my nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and I think one it said like impotency. I'm like, oh my God, they're probably taking a
So
pill
why are you
just because
smiling?
they're having a cough and
So-
all of a sudden they can't get their dick up. I'm like, you should know that. I mean, you gotta make sure everything's working. I think, I gotta make sure
Mhm.
everything's working, so I stay away from that crap.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's what I really want to put limitations, and I really found it very intriguing. With you and Dr. Don that because I've discussed this with a couple other doctors of my clients because some of my clients are functional doctors in LA County and they kind of promote like hyperbaric oxygen, ozone therapy, and vitamin infusion and stem cells. And they made the same comment. It's like, it's just because, you know, I the medical board of California is going to restrict my license if I really kind of completely talk about bad about these pharmaceuticals. But this is how I'm taught. I was taught in my medical institution with mainly those pharmacologies and surgeries. Those are the two main things.
Mhm.
These ate up like most of the curriculum in medical institutions. So
Pretty
I
much all
think
of it.
it needs to be
Yeah.
really addressed too. And So I'm very fortunate that I'm getting a lot more support than I expected. I really wished my own family would be supporting my oldest brothers uh supported me at least. My other brother's the opposite. I told you about him. He's like the complete opposite of me in like every way you can imagine. And then my uncle, who's the retired judge, he's actually really supported me too. So, and
Great.
I want to thank you because you were one of our biggest contributors. So I want to appreciate your donation
Oh,
based
of
on the work.
course, man.
So I'm
Well,
glad you're good work.
well, it's always important to, support, people that are gonna, help people. And that's the thing. I've known you for a while. I know what you're in this for. You're not trying to go in there to like, get involved in the insider trading and the sneaky,
Yeah.
backdoor deals
Yeah,
that are
Nancy
making
Pelosi's
people, yeah,
teaching those courses online now. I heard. So yeah,
like,
all the
yeah,
insider trading, how to build the wealthiest estate on a $200,000 salary, right?
exactly. So, you can teach a class,
Yeah.
and so, that's the thing. We need more people in politics that actually are trying to just like help people. Politics now, because it is so lucrative, because there is so much corruption, it attracts the wrong people.
Yeah,
And
and
previously,
I do feel that there is some good change, but I think it needs to be pushed to a new level, though. So
yeah, well, President Truman said the only way to get rich in politics is if you're corrupt. And now everyone's rich in politics, so what does that tell you? And so it attracts people that want to sell out, that want to be corrupt, that want to use the system for their advantage. And that's another thing too, having money in politics. I mean, the Supreme Court decisions of the 1930s with FDR, changing it from, you could only spend money on the general welfare, not, specific, general welfare of the people. You couldn't spend money on special interests. And they decided, and you'll know the details more to this, but they say, well, oh, actually, if I help this special interest, that's sort of like trickle down economics. It'll trickle out, and that'll help everybody. And so that is the general welfare of the people. And of course, that's exactly the opposite of what the framers said. James Madison, who basically wrote the Constitution, when he was a senator in the 1790s, I believe there was a slave revolt in Haiti, and they killed a bunch of the French slave owners in
yeah,
there, and then a lot of them fled over into the U.S. And there was a bill up in front of Congress saying that, well, maybe we should give them like $15,000 at a time, which is a lot of money, to just help them get on their feet. And James Madison went on the floor of the Senate and irate and just said, and he wrote this, and he said, I fail to lay my finger on that article of the Constitution that allows Congress to spend the money of its constituents for acts of benevolence. And seeing as that he wrote the damn thing, he would know. But that's what we're doing now is we're have all these special interests. We have all these these acts of benevolence, but they're not really. They're just sort of money laundering, taking public money and putting it in private hands, and that's what we're finding now. We're seeing all these areas of corruption and things like that. People siphoning money out, and because there's so much money in Congress now, or in just politics in general, it attracts those sorts of people. Whereas before that, before there was money in there, before they had this massive piggy bank and they had the Federal Reserve, they could just write blank checks that were payable by the American people and they could spend money on whatever they wanted. They couldn't do that. I mean, so it attracted people that actually wanted to view it as a public service, or felt that they could move things in a positive direction. And now it's really just more about what they can get out of it. And so when you see people that because you know them personally, they aren't looking for that. Obviously you want to support that sort of thing.
yeah, and I really think we just need people more outspoken. I think even before the election, I was like the only people like a person with bumper sticker like saying "Make
Mhm.
America Great Again" and all that. But I have so many colleagues that are attorneys. I gotta say, most attorneys I don't want to really completely annihilate my own profession, but I don't like my own
Mhm.
profession for many reasons. A lot of them just really don't have any testicles. These guys, they're afraid to speak out. They didn't want to
Mhm.
speak out. They're like, oh yeah, I don't want to get the vaccine, but I'm not going to speak out against it. I'm like, why? Like they're forcing it like on all of the employees. I have a lot of
Mhm.
friends who work with the government, and they're forcing it on all the government employees. I'm like, this is completely wrong. It should not be mandatory. I was like, why don't you speak out? But I just realized that a lot of people just they need a lot of people are afraid to speak out because they're like, well, I got a wife and kid. I don't want anybody coming after me. Because I
Mm.
know I told you I'm not married and I don't have any kids that I know about after college. But anyways, I I really I don't have anything to be really worried about. But I know we need, I'll say, beyond the carnivore community. I mean, the entire health community that want to make some changes and really realize that we're kind of falling apart, not only health wise, but economically too. Someone needs to speak up and have a spine and speak out. And I already told you I get threats for a living, and especially since I do bank garnishments, I do collections. One of the few attorneys that actually helps the clients collect from a judgment, because most judgments, I think a little over 90% of all monetary judgments are uncollectible. People don't realize that,
Oh,
or at
wow.
least they can't collect. Yeah, no, that's why you mainly took that. You look at if they were on real property because you can put liens on real property, and then you can. I'm one of the few attorneys that knows how to do a judicial foreclosure. Basically, you ask the court to sell the property to pay off the judgment. And it took me a couple of months to actually study and practice that. But I actually get hired by other attorneys to do that. But I got really good at garnishing bank accounts too. So I looked at how to ascertain, like, statewide and nationwide bank accounts. And that's why kind of like I mentioned Olivia, but yeah, she's really good point at that. And yeah, so I have a lot of people coming to me even after they get a judgment with a different attorney. But I was like, yeah, but we want to do collections. And when someone gets their bank account of, like, let's say if they have $80,000 just completely wiped out over like a $200,000 judgment, and you still got 120 remaining plus interest, the person will look at the notice that they get from the bank and the notice they get from the LA County Sheriff. It's going to have my name with the biggest font. Christopher
Right.
Bramlin is be the one that's wiping out your bank account.
Yeah, you're
And
the
my
guy.
client, sometimes my client's name is not even on it. I was like, this is kind of some interesting kind of like post kind of like attachment to a root of execution. But anyways, or my client's name on it's in the smallest font possible, but my name is usually larger, and it says, this is going to person, this is gonna, like the proof of service is going to have my address. So probably should get security at one point, but yeah, I get occasional death threats. I get a lot of threats, and especially when I spoke out about my political beliefs, a lot of other attorneys like trying to shut me down, and they're because
Mm.
some other attorneys are like, oh my God, he's an anti-vaxxer. He's gonna make everybody's worse. And then some of them even try to report me to this California state bar and a
Mm.
Texas state bar because I'm licensed in both states. I'm pro hoc feature a little bit like in Nevada, as I told you, I can do limited practice. But they try to report me to the state bar for speaking out against the vaccine, and they just call me the
Mm.
conspiracy theorist. That's I'm going to be worsening that. It's misinformation. All right, they're
Mm.
basically promoting misinformation to the entire public, and that's going to be in violation of some standards that relate to moral turpitude for the community. And it was complete bullshit. I had to speak with the California State Bar. They never prosecuted, but it's like everybody's trying to take me out because I'm speaking out. So
Mm.
I don't mind that. And I know it's going to get worse as I go through the politics. And I was told to get a gun, so I'm trying to expedite that right now. Yeah,
Wow.
but no, I think our entire country really needs people with some actual spine to speak out. You're always going to have some threats, but would you rather, was it like Emilio Zapata or something? Maybe one of those kind of like traditional speeches were like, I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees.
Mm.
I think we have to have more people that mentality. We need more strong men and women, and that's why I do like the new cabinet. I mean, huge fan of Pam Bondi and Tulsi Gabbard and a few others, and yeah, Christy Nome. And I think we need a lot more people to bring this up, but I think we need to embrace that. And I think my benefit that I want to bring to this campaign is I'm going to put a huge aspect on the changes of the Department of Public Health and how it's going to be affecting all, not only the medical institutions who are teaching our future doctors on how to treat clients instead of just treating them primarily pharmacology. For every problem, yeah, and here's a pill. We're not if you have a doctor, is common saying, if you go to a doctor and you tell the doctor you're having problems and he prescribes you medicine without asking about your lifestyle, your daily diet, you don't really have a doctor, you have a drug dealer, right? And I
Mm.
think that needs to be changed. I don't think patients, I think patients need to be patients again, patients instead of being customers, because patients are becoming customers for routine
Mm.
doctors. Like, you put them on these pharmaceuticals to see how it works. I do think there needs to be a huge change in how we're promoting the dietary guidelines for the children too. So I think that's going to be the most important, as you may recognize. I'm sure you have some nieces and nephews, right?
Mm.
Or at least some cousins that do. But yeah, you can see that like the kids nowadays are so unhealthy and out of shape. And not just that, you can't even tell what gender they are half the time. Like, oh my God, what is this? Like,
Mhm.
and so they're not only are they kind of giving them bad dietary problems, but they're promoting kind of like, hormone medication amongst the adolescents. I see some really huge moral issues with that. So I think that needs to be changed as well. And economically, I'm really a big proponent of the DOGE. So I know you're kind of in the United States for right now, and you probably have a lot of your family in the United States, right? So I gotta ask you, and I'm trying to stir this up politically too bad. I told you that before we started, but how does your family feel about $8 million of our tax dollars to going to transgender rat surgeries? Do you think that was really effective or necessary?
I don't even know if anybody even realized that. I don't think
Oh yeah,
anybody
no,
realized
exactly.
that. I think when they found
Yeah.
that, they were probably just like, Wait, we're doing what?"
Well,
It was,
and this is why you work hard and you pay your taxes is yeah,
yeah.
so you
Well,
can
that's
pay
it.
for
Yeah, but for for the
transgender surgeries
betterment
for
of
rats.
society, And who was it? Oh God, who's the guy? Uh, is it Rand Paul? Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been doing this for years. He goes up and he's just like, it's like we're spending this. We're like, this is like, $200,000 on this nonsense study. $5 million on
And
this. Not.
I
He's been
like him
calling this
because
out
he
for
hates Fauci.
years.
He hates Fauci just as much as I do too. So I'm a
Yeah.
huge fan of him. But yeah, you see a lot of this, and there's so much waste of our tax here. I mean, I want transparency, and people are like,
Mhm.
well, you think you're going to be hiding like every other politician? You're an attorney, you're going to be hiding. I'm like, no, I think I'm like Mr. TMI. I'm going to give you too much information, stuff that you even don't want to hear. Okay, so
This is
yeah, so I think that's really needs to be focused. Like, I really don't. Even if people want to run a really detailed background, go ahead and welcome. Do it. All you're going to find is a bunch of speeding tickets. You're not going to find any major. I did
some
some crime in
broken
college,
legs
but
and
it
things
was,
like
yeah,
that.
I stuck with the
Yeah.
basics. It was just weed and alcohol. Okay, it was the typical fraternity president. But no, I think I got my shit together. I think I've proven myself. So I got to watch on the language. Apologize. So go ahead.
Sure. So, yeah, well, it's interesting. Like you were talking about everybody on this cascade of medications, which is called a prescription cascade, where you go on one medication and then that causes side effects. You need another medication and another medication and another medication. And pretty soon you find out that you're on 8, 9 different medications, and what the hell are they for? They actually came as a consequence of all the other medications. And really, it's just this one medication back here that you really should be on something else, and then that just knocked down all the dominoes. Callie Means was talking about this. He's a whistleblower. He's an insider for the food and processed food and drug companies, and he said that there's at one point he heard it was like speaking with like an executive from some drug company, and he said that the guy asked a rhetorical question. So he said, "Hey, you know what my favorite drug is that our company makes?" And they're like, you would hope it'd be something like something that like treats like childhood leukemia or something like that actually like helps somebody. And he's like, "No, my favorite drug that our company makes are drugs that have side effects that we have other drugs that treat." And if I heard that, I probably would have just punched him in the neck, just like
Exactly.
just dropped him. I mean that's just evil. I mean that's
That
actually
is very
evil.
sinister. You know that you're only thriving
On
financially
suffering.
based on the
Yeah.
more they suffer, the more money I make. People
Yeah.
need to
Well, and you're
recognize.
you're, you're treating people as things. These are just chattel. We're just going to use it as like, how do we milk these things for money? How do we,
Ape.
it's really sort of a slave master mentality. You're,
Yeah,
you're you're just trying to keep people under control and just milk money off them and take advantage of them as much as possible, as opposed to, the free market system has been described as forced altruism. You have to provide something beneficial for other people or they won't buy your product. And so this is sort of like a sort of a sneaky backdoor thing where yes, they can provide a lot of benefit, but they intentionally don't try to cure anything. They intentionally just try to have it good enough so you can live with the disease and live with the problem and never get off of it. And so then you're sort of beholden to them. And that's a corruption of that. Now, you can choose. You can choose, okay, well, maybe I don't want to do that. But there's no other game in town, they don't really have much of a choice. And when you have doctors who are now basically being trained to be drug peddlers. We're sort of the on-street drug pushers for the cartels. And I do think of them as drug cartels. I don't think of these things as legitimate organizations. They're dealing drugs, and it's just that these drugs happen to be legal under certain circumstances, under certain conditions. But they're obviously still drugs, but there's that same mentality. It's not just like, hey, let's cure disease. They're explicitly not trying to cure disease. They're explicitly trying to treat symptoms so that you can give them that medication their whole life, because that's what any good drug dealer does. You hook them early, you get them young, and you keep them for the rest of their life. So you get that return, that comeback, and they're addicted, and they have to come back. One, with cocaine or meth because they're addicted and they can't stop, and the others because they have high blood pressure and they're going to stroke out, so they can't stop. And so instead of trying to actually fix people and help them, they're just trying to milk them and take advantage of them in a sickened state, and that really bothers me. And that's sort of what drives me to do this, because a lot of these things are so easy to fix. They're so simple, so straightforward. It may not be very easy for someone to execute that and completely change their lifestyle, but it is simple. There is a solution here. Hippocrates said, over 2,000 years ago, before you try to heal somebody, first ask them if they're willing to give up that which is making them sick. And that we knew that 2,500 years ago. And now it's like, no, no, no. The only thing that can fix people are drugs. Only things that can fix people for these diseases that never existed in this number are drugs. It's like, well, what changed to make these so prevalent? Why don't we look at that and maybe stop doing that, and we might have better results.
Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys.
Kind of like the low fat craze that kind of stirred up in the
Yeah,
80s, where they said,
yeah,
"Oh,
exactly.
fat's going to be killer. We're reducing every fat," and then all of a sudden, you seem that everybody just starts going overloading on carbohydrates and just gets
Hmm.
tremendously overweight. Yeah, no, and you bring up a good point about when the doctors are overprescribing. I think that's a huge issue. But I think
Hmm.
there is also I'm going to give it a little leniency. So look, I'd never like to bash the entire profession. So that's why I enjoy having functional doctors as clients that think outside the box. And
Hmm.
one of them actually wants to help with the lawsuit that Dr. Don is. So I haven't handled a class action in a long time. It's so much work, but you have to
I
work on a
bet.
team. Yeah,
Yeah.
but no, but I think I don't think there's a huge amount of doctors that are just completely sinister and evil. I just think of a lot of
No,
them.
definitely not.
They're no,
No.
they're misinformed, they're miseducated. Where, yeah, look at if I'm being be taught this through my entire kind of like education and is going becoming a medical doctor that pharmaceuticals are going to be necessary to treat all these different conditions, then that's what I'm going to be believing is going to be helping my patients. They think they're going to
Yeah.
be helping patients, and that's where they go. So I don't think they're and I don't think they're uneducated. They're just miseducated. It's just they're
Yeah.
just taught like a different kind of
Yeah.
rubric, and I think that should be focused too. And I did like the fact that there are like just like doctors, there's a lot of attorneys that will
Mhm.
make more money off for more person suffering financially because
Mhm.
they'll get them in a situation. They'll convince them like, yeah, you know what? We really got to take the case this direction. This is going to be the best thing. And all of a sudden, they're losing these motions that they're filing. They're like, you know what? That wasn't necessary, but I want to take these depositions. I'm like, oh, you're going to take them. They're either non-party, like they're not even like witnesses to the incident or to a transaction. And do
Mhm.
you really need to be spending a hotel like when you fly out? Because there's a rule of law. If you take an in-person deposition in the state of California, basically the rule is that you have to take it within 75 miles of the radius. And this is why I represented a couple of large companies in 2014. And I remember had to go back and forth to the East Coast to take these depositions, all these witnesses, because I couldn't bring them over here to California. But there are
Mhm.
attorneys that will kind of take advantage of people just, suffering financially, just getting
Mm,
worse. And they just know how to trick them. And then sometimes they just, yeah,
yeah,
it have a manipulative
slimy.
behavior. So that's something that really needs to be addressed too. So
Yeah.
that's gonna be
No,
part of my too.
yeah. Oh, definitely. And the thing with doctors is like, most doctors have the right mindset. They're actually trying to help people. But
Yeah.
these are the tools we're given. This is what we're taught. And you get into medical school and you're just there and you're just getting flooded with information and you're just trying to, stay
Yeah.
afloat, because there's nothing like truly complex about medicine. It's all straightforward stuff. It's not like, crazy, like, oh my God, I just can't get my head around what a liver is. It's like you can get into the minutiae of the biochemistry and all that sort of stuff. But, and typically in the practical realms of things and what you need to know, it's not complicated. There's just a lot of it. There's a ton of it. And so you're just trying to stay afloat and you have to be apprised of all this information and how to apply it in a practical setting. So there's a complexity in that regard. But, you don't know. You don't know what it's like to be a doctor. You don't know if this is the best way or if there's better alternatives. We just know that in this medical system that this is what we're being taught. And so it's not until you sort of get into it and you sort of see this other world, the other side of it, and you're like, well, wait, hold on a second. There's a bit more here. But a lot of doctors, like the functional medicine doctors you're talking about, they're the ones who've seen that, and there's like, wait, well, actually, there's more here. We don't have to just patch up the boat with drugs and things like that. We could fix the boat. We could actually do something proper. And so most people have that mentality, and when they see this, as Dr. Gary Fettke said, once you see this, you can't unsee it. Once you see the benefits of therapeutic carbohydrate restriction for someone with diabetes that needs to get their foot amputated, and now they don't, you can't unknow that. And then you go into the next situation where someone has a diabetic foot or something like that, and you just go, hey, look, I know something that can work for this. You don't have to just accept this fate and start getting, body parts cut off, which is a horrible, horrible thing to have to do and go through as a patient. But even for a doctor, Gary Fettke was talking about how it's just awful it was. You're taking off a foot or leg, and you just hear this funk of like a human body part chunking into a trash can that you have underneath it. It's just like chilling. It's just an
It
awful
is.
thing.
And that's why I do like some of my doctor clients and colleagues
Mm,
that, hey, you know what, for a very serious infection or condition, or especially if it's very inflammatory, if you considered medical grade hyperbaric oxygen therapy, I will write you a
mm,
prescription, but your insurance will probably not cover it, but it's probably worth saving your life. And that's what I did
mm.
when I was having some skin infections right after, or like skin ulcerations right after the intestinal surgeries.
Surgeries, yeah.
Yeah, I think I told you I developed like a very like one of the most rare skin conditions from so much inflammation that they considered
Mm,
it cancerous, but it's called pyoderma gangrenosum. So derma, skin, and then gangrenosum, like, and you think of
mm.
people think of gangrene where you're getting these ulcerations on your body and it starts. Start off as a bruise, and then all of a sudden you could put your fingers inside your body and touch your bones, and it gets that
Jeez.
bad.
Oh
Uh,
God. Don't do
yeah,
that.
so that's why medical
Please
grade
don't do
hyperbaric
that.
oxygen. Yeah, but you know what? It's kind of interesting that you're mentioning diabetic ulceration. So, with that's the main, like a huge proponent of amputations for a lot of diabetic patients, right? Is they're developing. It's not only just getting bad blood flow; it's just you're developing really bad kind of like circulation. And you're getting very inflamed and infected limbs, and that's where you like see like you gotta cut it off. I mean, if that infection kind of spreads over, you're going to have like the worst sepsis possible. So yeah, I actually met a lot of people who were actually able to avoid amputation, even though they already had it pre-scheduled because they did medical grade hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So I think a lot of functional medicine really needs to be investigated too. I don't consider a lot of things that come out of functional medicine anything part of pharmaceuticals. Like I'm a huge proponent of peptides. So a
Mm,
lot of my clients over here, functional doctors, they promote peptide therapy. I'm sure you're familiar with like, Joe Rogan speaks out of it because he's a big fan of it
mhm,
too. Is like, BPC 157. It's just like, a combination of amino acids. When you put them in a certain kind of combination, it can like substantially reduce your inflammation, gut and systemic.
mhm,
There's other things for like joints and basically, thymosin beta. I mean, people are kind of prone to more infections despite the diet. I mean, they can consider thymosin alpha 1 because that's helpful to stabilize their immune system. You have LL37. And I actually started looking into more of the nootropics too. So, we got like studies from Solank and CMAX that have been shown to basically, reverse some vascular, some really bad aspects of vascular dementia. They can actually start regaining their memory again. Hey, because I don't like the fact that a judge told me yesterday at mediation. I've known her for a long time, but I had a 10-hour mediation yesterday when I came back to LA. It was a long thing, and as you said, we're talking about dementia. So my case was the person that had a $10 million estate developed dementia like in 2023. It was 2022 and it worsened. It became like, accelerated dementia, severe dementia in 2023. And at that time, he executed all these documents to transfer everything to his new wife. But, we try to explain that, he was fine. He knew what he was doing. I'm like, no, but the judge's like, no, if you have dementia, it only gets worse, which is it is somewhat true, but it really depends on how you address it, though, too.
Hmm.
And I think that is a huge kind of like cognitive component of the ketogenic diet, too, and a carnivore diet, essentially, is
Hmm.
to, yeah, I've realized that I've been so much more functional. I mean, I'm a freaking, if you look at my college background, you're going to think I'm a partyholic, but if you look at everything from this day, you're like, you're a
After that,
nerd.
yeah.
Yeah, but no, I still exercise every week, and I just don't eat a lot of bullshit. I have slipped on a little bit more tequila than I wanted to every couple of weeks. It's go to a function, you have a couple of shots. So I'm trying to address that because I do think alcohol is poison. I'm not going to stick up for anyway.
Hmm.
But no, I think people need to recognize that diet can probably improve our test scores for our children. Did everybody
Hmm.
think of that? I mean,
Sure.
is the Department of Education doing it since the 1970s, right? No, it's kind of been plummeted ever since Jimmy Carter. So I'm
Hmm.
so glad we kind of got rid of that. But no, we need to address like a lot of the benefits that you can get. And people need to realize that we should all address metabolic health. Food is medicine, and you
Hmm.
won't need a lot of these pharmaceuticals. I think that should really be focused and expanded in not only the medical institutions and every kind of hospital that kind of arranging it for any kind of nurse practitioner or anything, but also put it with the AND, put the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, because they would be a subject defendant on a class action lawsuit that I may be taking. So I'm
Hmm.
trying to collect a little bit more support. I can't find any other attorneys. I can't find a few, but a lot of them that don't want to take down the big medical institutions because they support them. Maybe it's because I was born and raised in LA County, and it's a very liberal state. So these are the ones that are driving around with the mask on by themselves in their cars, and they're still doing it. 4 years later, there's like I said, they're probably sleeping with their condoms on. It's those kind of people that I need to get a better team to get with me. I know I already have a good amount of functional doctors that want to do a class action lawsuit. I'll do this during my campaign. I don't give a shit. I'm more than positive I can handle it. So, yeah, because I think there needs to be a focus on, okay, why is the Medical Board of California and all these other states teaching this? And what is your affiliations with them, with these pharmaceutical companies? And well, we're going to be restricting some of their funding, and we want to change some of your curriculum. But they're not going to want to do that. And I think there is some kind of really sinister behavior of that. So I think that needs to be addressed. And
Hmm.
we we need to make changes across the board. I really want to save our farmers. When I came
Hmm.
back from Budapest to the United States in 2018, Dr. Sophia Clemens, who I'm still speaking with, she was talking about putting me as a case study in her new book. She's like, we talked, the first thing that she did is like, hey, if you're going back to the United States, here's a list of farmers that we recommend for you to buy your meat from. And one of
Oh,
those
cool.
was you. Yeah, no, I was so kind of intrigued. I was like, look, you got someone from Hungary telling you which meat
Hmm.
farmers to buy from when you go to the United States that they kind of work
Yeah.
with. What was U.S. Wellness Meats? They're known as I think they're based out of Missouri, and getting a like bulk amount of tallow from them because it was hard to find tallow at a lot of grocery stores. And actually, I think they took out tallow during the lockdown. I'm not sure if you remember that. They took
Wait,
out they stopped selling tallow at Whole Foods and Sprouts for like 2 to 3 months.
what?
Yeah, they said it's
That's
backordered, but
bizarre.
they said they're trying to put restrictions, and this is when you had the meat shortages. They put
Mm.
restrictions on basically the production of meat in farms.
Mm.
That's what I think needs to be addressed in my campaign as well. We need to save the people that put real food on our tables. All right, we need to
Yeah.
save the farmers. This is why I'm a huge. When I met Congressman Tom Massey and at DC inauguration at the Maha Ball, I'm going to follow up, so I may go visit him in Kentucky. But I just remember that he made. That's why I've already known of him before I even got there, is because he's one of the few politicians that's speaking out to save our farmers. He is like the first thing he said on stage is like, hey, how many of you guys like real raw milk? And I was like, so
Mhm.
you would never hear like any politician say that before that. And I was
Yeah.
so impressed. So I had a good time meeting him. But yeah, I think we need a balance. I think we need to change a lot of the curriculum in medical schools, but also, across the board. I think there needs to be a new way we address health problems. That's going to be a huge thing. I think we need to put a lot of limitations on Pfizer. I don't think all pharmaceuticals are completely bad. There are some that have a little bit more efficacy just based on the
Mhm.
years of research that it could be promoted, and they're a lot
Mhm.
simpler and they don't have so many damaging side effects. But that should be addressed, and I also want to basically make sure that all the funding that we're going through, and hopefully the DOGE keeps finding some more interesting things, like the
Mhm.
$50 million of condoms that we sent to Gaza. I don't know the purpose of that, but it is. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's another thing that came up too. But I think there needs to be funds spent on the proper areas, and I think we need more people to be outspoken on that. So that's what I really want to make on my campaign. I was fortunate to meet with Dr. Kiltz a few weeks ago because I think you did a podcast with him like right before I met him, by the way, too.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so I told him that, like, since I'm mainly running in Las Vegas because I'm a dual resident, half the time I'm spending most of my time in Vegas recently, and is I want to host one of the largest meetups, but
Mhm.
I don't want to restrict it to the carnivore community. That's going to be the main thing. It's a meetup,
Mhm.
MEEAT. Okay. So I sent you the flyer. I think it's on my campaign website now too. We have a separate page on that too for the meetup. We're expecting a huge crowd, and I'm working with a bunch of farmers. I want to get a bulk amount of meat. Buying 400
Mhm.
pounds of meat is going to be very expensive. I'm not sure if you've ever done that before, but it's especially if you're buying quality meat too, because you're trying to promote
Yeah.
the farmers.
Mhm.
So I'm using my life savings for this campaign, as you can see. But
Yeah,
anybody
well.
that promotes and fundraises the campaign, it's just going to go back to them because I want to make this event primarily for the carnivores. But I'm also extending it out to the ketogenic community as well as the functional health community and everybody that just wants to make America healthy again. So that's why I started working with hyperbaric oxygen clinics over in Las Vegas. The one that I've been recently going to that I do is, especially when I had like to go from California, drive to Vegas, fly to Austin, Texas to meet with Dr. Kiltz, is do there 2 days, and then fly back to Vegas and then drive back to LA at midnight. You can see I can like really wear you down, right? So I'm beating myself up, but I'm including hyperbaric oxygen therapy every week, and I go to Desert Moon Wellness, and I like them because that's where all the UFC fighters go too. So you get to see like the
Yeah.
Hall of Fame basically on all the UFC fighters that go there. It's like, right, like you'd be amazed, but there's almost all the UFC is like going to this like clinic and treated. But when you think about it, how hard they train, yeah, they're gonna get
Mhm.
inflamed. They regenerate faster. That's the best thing about hyperbaric oxygen therapy. It's oxygen. It's not like you're injecting anything. You're getting a very like amount of like pressure in a controlled in a closed environment. But yeah,
Mhm.
I've been benefiting that red light therapy. Yeah, and I think there should be more research on peptide therapy because peptide therapy and stem cells, I think should be investigated a little bit more. I know the FDA is putting a lot of restrictions on that, but one of our mutual colleagues, Dr. Sabrina Solt from
Mhm.
Arizona. So I told you right before I went skydiving the first week of this year, she I think a couple months before, right before the new year, I saw her and I said, hey. I've been traveling back and forth. My tailbone, I fractured this before. It's just a sensitive
Mhm.
thing. If you ever had like a fractured tailbone and if it gets inflamed, it's a pain in the ass, literally, right? So it was hard to fly and I was getting the back was tightening as a result. But yeah, she actually took out my bone, but I didn't have enough fat on me, like, even if
Mhm.
so she's like, look at you. You don't have enough fat. You have to have like a stick of butter on your back, basically. You have to grab it, and it has to be a stick of butter. That's how much fat or adipose you need for an adipose derived stem cells. Okay, so the main
Mhm.
two stem cells from your own body is from adipose or your bone marrow, which is part of your pelvis. I was so impressed. So I got a promoter because look at been through a lot of painful experience in my life. Even though I built a bit in pentatonics, I know if something's going to be painful, but I didn't feel anything. It was perfect. She drilled a
Mhm.
huge plunger right into my pelvis, sucked out
Jesus.
all the bone marrow, and put it through a centrifuge, kind of concentrated to get the stem cells extracted, and then she injected it right in, like next to my tailbone and along
Mhm.
my L4, L5. I felt
Mhm.
fucking amazing. Not only did I go sky diving right afterwards, I think I did that a little too soon, but I didn't feel anything when I landed. Because usually, even when you brace 10 feet before you land, because I used to do a lot of skydiving, you always feel that kind of impact on your hips and your joints and everything right when you land, especially if you have to turn a ball. But I didn't feel anything. I was like, I think there should be a little bit more focus on functional medicine. So I do promote Dr. Schultz too. I told her, I was like, look at, you know what, I don't let needles anywhere near my ass, but it's only going to be you if in the future. So it's all right. Her husband,
Yeah,
like, but it's all right. She does
that's
good work,
funny.
and that's why I think the carnivore community is very interesting because I think with niche expansive, we should have people from like every kind of like every different industry that has the carnivore community. Like we should get more veterinarians involved in the
Mhm.
carnivore. So what are you going to feed your
There
pets,
are.
right?
Yeah,
I told you I
yeah,
feed my French bulldog, Remy. He loves raw beef. So and
yeah.
he's thriving. His gut and his bowel movements are like so much better. He's not getting any
Mhm.
itchy rashes. So yeah, I think there should be a really huge focus on the health moving forward. I'm really hoping we can do that, and I really want everybody to go to, and including you if you can make it. You'll get a
Mhm.
special. It'll be a special guest speaker if you can make it. But yeah, it's going to be July 19th, and Dr. Hiltz is actually helping me promote it because he asked me to host it, and he's going to be one of the co-promoters basically. So I'm going to see
Yeah.
him in a couple.
Yeah, well, if I'm around, then yeah, I'd love to, and definitely help promote it as well. Um, Chris, I know that you have another meeting coming up in a few minutes,
10 minutes.
but
That's okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
we touched on a few things about the different things that you wanted to affect when you went into Congress, but just to sort of get that in one place, what are the things that you're hoping to achieve by running for Congress?
Running for Congress, I think I need to be I think there's a lot of voices that need to be heard at
Mhm.
higher levels. And I addressed this at your was it KetoCon or what was the one that you had in Texas last year? You spoke with Bella, Dr. Kills,
Oh,
Baker.
that's
Oh, Keto Your Health
Hack
or
Your
something?
Health.
Hack Your Health,
Hack Your
right?
Health.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I actually posed a question. I don't think if you remember, but I think like a couple people answered, but I don't you didn't address the question, but I think a couple other people addressed it. But I asked like, how do you think we can improve the health basically by, if we try to do this at a congressional level, like how can we, and then they're like, oh, just word of mouth. And that was the only thing, like, tell it this was, I'm like, yeah, but the people need to recognize, and this is what my strong belief is that the people at the congressional levels have so much more power and influence over the people,
Hmm.
especially because you're going to be, you're going to be looking at people that are running your country on telling you what to do. And I think there needs to be a little bit more promotion at that level. And if I'm telling that
Hmm.
everybody that we need to readdress, our public health at a national level, and also addressing some of the, the balance of our equities and putting our money where it should be going to not only kind of health, but your proper forms of education. And also, I think a lot of people, I really want a lot more subsidies to American meat farmers. These are
Hmm.
people that put real food on your tables. And I met with these meat farmers. I'm actually going to be, they're going to be at Meat Stock with me in Tennessee in May. But yeah, I think they should be a lot more focused, and I think there should be more government grants going over
Hmm.
to them, basically to, hey, you're putting, because I like the fact that gas prices are going down a little bit, but have you seen the prices of meat in the last like 4 years
Hmm.
skyrocket? It was just amazing. I
Way
think
up.
we need to make it more affordable because that should be the primary thing on everybody's plate. So that's going to
Yeah.
be one of my huge components. And then my other thing is my concern with schooling. So I can't make this too political, but my they're installing my nephew with a
Mm.
brother that I really respect. We found out that they're installing tampon machines in the boys' restrooms, and these kids are like 10 or 11 years old.
Mm.
So I think that is a very moral issue, and I didn't like the fact that not only trying to take him, but they're trying to take a lot of my friends' kids over in Long Beach Unified.
Mm.
They're taking kids to drag shows without the parent consent, and I'm really worried about the mental health of our kids. So, in addition to addressing their physical health, I think their mental health needs to be addressed too. I think we need to have good, true traditional values.
Mm.
And I think that should be a huge concern for our kids going forward. So
Yeah.
that's one of the major issues. I know I'm going to get a lot of backlash because everyone's like, "Oh, you're transphobic." I'm like, no, there's only two genders. You shouldn't be confusing the kids at this early an age. You're really screwed up with their development, and you can see that the mental health of the kids completely plummeted for the past, I'll say, a couple decades at least.
Well, the thing is too is that doing it without the parent, not only their consent but their knowledge. I mean that's out of bounds. If you want to raise your kids any way you want, that's your business as long as you're not hurting them. But um, but taking that say out of the parents' hands, I think that's criminal. You don't get to do that. I mean, there were kids in my class, when I was growing up, that their parents didn't want them to be part of sex ed. They didn't want them doing that. Well, as part of the curriculum. Yeah, well, I don't want that. Fine, okay. So kids got out of that. They had a say. Parents had a say in what happened, and now they're saying no, parents aren't allowed to do that. At least in certain areas. Some places they do still have a say, but you obviously there are cases where they are sort of doing this without the parents' permission or knowledge, and that's not okay. If the parents are okay with that and they want that to happen, that's one thing. But when you take the choice away from the parent, that's the problem for sure.
No, I think just in general, I'm very outspoken. I don't
Mhm.
mind threats, but I think we need myself and a lot of other people too. We need really strong men and women to carry this country forward. And
Mhm.
I don't think we could ever make up for the past, but we need a positive movement forward. So that's what I'm willing to
Mhm.
do.
Yep. Very good. Well, Chris, thank you so much for that. This has been with Chris Brandlin, the carnivore lawyer, who's hopefully
Yes.
going to be the carnivore congressman, and will be running in Nevada. What district are you running in?
Third District of Nevada, and you can find all the information on my campaign as well as the meetup if you go to chrisbrandlin.com. So you'll get the spelling of my last name, but and we'll have a link on that for the Las Vegas meetup. And we're just asking people to basically sign up just to get information because I want to make sure I get a good head count because I want to make sure if I have to spend a little extra money because I'm going to make this very affordable because a lot of people are telling me that they don't want to travel to a lot of these functions events. They're restricted money.
Mm,
I'm going to make this the most affordable meetup, and I'm actually going to be taking eating most of the funds myself.
taking the
So this,
brunt on that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm going to take it, but I think I'm going to get good karma at the end. So I'm willing to pay a lot of my finances towards it personally to make it better. So yeah,
Well, that's good. Well, that's what's really appreciated, and I'm definitely happy to help promote that as well. Chris, thank you so much for coming on. It's great to see people like yourself that think that they've got something, some way that they can help the community and the society, as opposed to just trying to benefit themselves. So really glad to see, and that's the thing you're saying. I mean, you're spending your life savings on this. It's not like you're trying to do this to cash out. You're trying to
no,
do this because you think this is something that is important to do,
my
and
estate
so
value
just
will go
appreciate that.
down. I'll promise that, and I'll substantiate it too.
What will go down? Sorry.
I said my overall estate value, basically
Oh yeah,
your net
right. Yeah,
estate, because
exactly.
I got stocks and all this everything, but I got different investments in different states. But I'm telling you right now, I'm selling them off to pay for this. So I already know it's going to go down, but I feel it's going to be worth it at the end. So that's what I'm praying
Yeah.
for.
Well, well, good for you, man, and good for you for stepping up and trying to make a difference. So we appreciate that. Chris, pleasure to see you again, and good luck in the election. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thanks a lot, Anthony.
Thanks, man. And thank you, everyone, for joining. Please do go to Chris's website and join us in Las Vegas for the meetup in July. I will do my best to be there as well. And either way, there'll be a lot of great people there. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.
Hey guys, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to what I had to say. If you like it, then please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and podcast. And if you're on YouTube, then please hit that little bell and subscribe, and that'll let you know anytime I have a new video out, which should be every week, if not more. And if you could share this with your friends, that would help me get the word out and let me know that you like what I'm doing. Thanks again, guys.